This year, the DC Bar turns 50. Since 1972, the DC Bar has set the gold standard for legal excellence. Join us as we commemorate the trailblazing accomplishments and ideals that have shaped our history and define how we can continue to raise the bar for the next 50 years together. Visit 50years.dcbar.org to learn more. Welcome to Brief Encounters. I'm Pam Robinson, Director of the DC Bar's Communities Office. Today, you'll hear about DC Bar Communities, the bar's practice specialty and special interest entities, which provide programs and services to help DC lawyers reach success and satisfaction in their legal careers. Today, I'm joined by Felicia Battista, Chair of the 2022 Communities Committee, as well as Tom Mugavero, Vice Chair of the committee. Welcome, Tom and Felicia. To start, I'm certain our audience would like to hear a little bit about each of you, your practice, and how you came to be involved in the DC Bar Communities. Felicia?
My practice is primarily pro bono bankruptcy, and I do the clinics in the federal court in DC and the Eastern District of Virginia. I have been a member of the old sections committee since 2009, and how I got involved with which is now Communities. I just nominated myself to be on the corporations committee, and I said, either they're going to vote for me or not vote for me, and I got on. I was voted on, and then with Tom, prior to me, he was chair of the sections committee, and then I became chair. So I've been really involved with Communities since 2009, and it's a great experience.
Well, I'm glad you took that chance, Felicia. Tom, tell me a little bit about your background and your experience with Communities.
Sure. I'm a civil litigator. I do trial work. I appear regularly in the DC courts and the Virginia courts and the Maryland courts. Like Felicia, I self-nominated myself back in 1897, I think. About the same time, actually, as Felicia, about somewhere in the late 2000s. I self-nominated myself for the Tort Law Committee and got on the committee, became co-chair, and then from that, sat on the Sections Council, was vice chair and then chair, and Felicia was my vice chair, and continued to participate. I found that once you get in and once you start participating, it's very, very difficult to stop.
Well, any of our listeners who are interested in becoming involved, it sounds like there are opportunities for leadership in addition to the learning that you would get from being involved in the communities. Tell me a little bit, Tom, about how your practice has benefited from your participation in Communities.
Well, first, obviously, there are the CLEs, the programs put on by various committees. There's a wealth of information out there. I don't think anybody could tap it adequately. It's just enormous. Certainly, in serving on the Tort Law Committee and in serving on the Sections Council, it's the interaction with your colleagues, their insights, their experiences, their way of viewing different legal issues. They're raising legal issues that never occurred to you. All of this is beneficial to anybody's professional advancement. I mean, more ideas is better than less, certainly.
Similarly, Felicia, tell me a little bit about how the educational opportunities and the programs have benefited your practice. And although I know that you're recently retired, you continue to stay involved in Communities. So if you would, in addition to telling us how it supported your day-to-day practice, tell me why you've stayed involved, even though your work setting has changed.
I wouldn't give this up. I love it because you learn so much from who you meet, and especially now I do pro bono work, but there are other issues. People come in that need to file for bankruptcy, but guess what? They have other issues going on. They may have some issues in the Superior Court or other courts, and it's just not bankruptcy. So I can reach out to people that I know that I've met through the bar, through the communities, to get some further assistance. So it's a wonderful opportunity because, I always say, don't be afraid to say I don't know, because a lot of times you hear things that you just don't know, and you need to reach out to people, and you need to talk to them, and it's just a wonderful opportunity because I have a list that I know I can call. I mean, I've called Tom a couple times. It's a great opportunity, and I would not give this up, because once you're a lawyer, you're always a lawyer, and you have to think beyond the box. And I must say, I agree with Tom. The DC Bar has great programs, wonderful programs for all different types of law. And I get onto those programs. And I'm still an active bar member. And I'm an active bar member not only in DC, but Pennsylvania. And I need CLE credit for Pennsylvania. I take all different classes because I want to learn about different things.
What Felicia said actually reminded me of something else, which is you asked about sort of how it supports our practice. The DC Bar and the communities also offer an excellent opportunity for pro bono service. And I wanted to put a plug in for that. I know I don't do nearly as much as Felicia does, and I probably don't do as much as I ought to, but there are numerous opportunities to serve in a pro bono capacity through the DC Bar. Not only is that what we should do as lawyers and as empathic human beings, but it also gives you an opportunity to use some of those other skills that you don't normally use in your overall practice. I mean, as a civil litigator, I do a lot of business litigation. I represent a lot of companies. I'm involved in, big level settlement negotiations. But as a pro bono volunteer, I have had the opportunity to help individuals with unemployment insurance, with expungement matters, any number of things that never would have come my way and would not have given me the opportunities had I stayed within the paying section of the practice. So I think in addition to everything else, the fact that the DC Bar gives us an opportunity to serve the community is an important consideration.
Well, it sounds to me a little like you get entree to various parts of the DC Bar. So you might come in through communities and then hear about a pro bono opportunity, or you might get involved in a pro bono opportunity and then stumble upon the DC Bar communities and learn about their programs. So it's kind of symbiotic. Once you get in one area, you hear about all of the other things that the DC Bar is doing. When I think about the areas of practice that you all have mentioned, torts and bankruptcy, and also the practice settings, whether it's large, mid-sized, small government agencies, in-house or nonprofit, in addition to the programs and the volunteer opportunities, there are some other products and services that communities provides that you all are familiar with. Tom, tell me, do you know anything about the wealth management series that Communities puts on?
I know they told me to stop spending on Amazon. Does that count? I do know something. I mean, I can hardly claim to be an expert on it. I don't run the programs. I mean, these are, again, as you said, a different opportunity, a different service afforded to members. These were fascinating seminars on just fundamental money management issues, how to deal with inflation, how to handle your retirement account, as you reach the end of your active career, what to do about Social Security benefits and Medicare and the rest of that. I think it's important information. And as practitioners, very often we get so wrapped up in our clients' work that we forget to step back and say, what have I got to do for myself? What's my account look like? So that I think it's valuable programs.
I think oftentimes when people think of practice specialty programming, we're thinking about the practice. But it sounds to me like the communities is looking at the total lawyer, looking at their career satisfaction, but looking at their overall well-being. We've got wellness programs also that individuals attend that are very highly rated, and folks have found them to be very beneficial. Felicia, I know that one of the other products that the DC Bar Communities provides is the practice management guidebook. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, it's the DC Practice Manual, and it used to come out every year, but now we do it like every other year for updates with the DC rules. And I've gotten involved when I was sections chair and when we were the old sections. And it's a wonderful manual. Now you get it online. And if you're practicing in DC and if you're doing forming businesses or whatever, it's a wonderful go-to tool, because sometimes, we think of federal law, but we really don't focus on DC law. And you're going to be forming a corporation or forming an organization. You really need to know what's going on in DC. And the people that prepare it work really hard to update that manual. And it's a great tool. It's a wonderful tool.
Yes, we will be publishing and posting the 2022 version of the manual in a few weeks. Felicia, communities are kind of like voluntary bars. Even though the DC bar is a mandatory bar and to practice, you must be admitted to the bar. But the communities are very much like voluntary bars around the country. And voluntary organizations, not just the bar, but other organizations, are having to make some modifications to their recruitment efforts, because people just don't join voluntary organizations the way they used to. What would you say to DC attorneys who simply pay their license fees and don't necessarily join communities? What are they missing out on?
I think they're missing the whole way of life, because if you practice in DC, you must join. It's a mandatory bar, but the communities are voluntary. But the communities offer so much in programming and meeting other people in different practice areas. And sometimes you don't get that wherever you work. If you work for government, if you work for a law firm, it opens up a lot of opportunities. One thing we do specialize in is the programming, that we have so many programs in all different areas of practice. I think Tom even said sometimes things you don't even think about. When you take these programs, you start thinking, well, maybe I should be thinking about this, or maybe I should be thinking about that. So it's the communities, even though it's voluntary, it's a whole different, way of life. It sort of helps you in your practice, and you meet many different people in other areas of practice. So yes, I have to join the DC bar because I practice in DC, but I would be lost if we're just not at communities, because there's so much to offer.
Tom, what would you add to that?
Well, let me put it this way, and I may alienate some of the listeners, although probably I'm preaching to the choir at this point. As a civil litigator, I can often tell during the course of a litigation who isn't active in the communities, because these are the people who haven't changed their practice in 20 years. They do it the way they've always done it, and they have no idea how the law has developed. And the people who are active in the bar, the people who join the communities, who go to the programs, who pay attention to what's going on in the bar, these are the people who are better able to practice, and who are, by necessity, they keep abreast of developments, they attend CLE, they're just better practitioners. And I think, like Felicia said, if you just join because you got to be here to get your license, you're not only missing out on great opportunities, but let's face it, you're not doing yourself any favors.
And then also not doing your clients any favors as well.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, we all make mistakes. Some, like me, more than others. But if you don't keep up with your colleagues and your fellow practitioners, then yeah, you're not doing your clients any favors, because you're not keeping up with what you need to know.
We talked a little bit about the practice specialty communities and how they keep you up to date, how they provide opportunities for networking with colleagues, but we haven't talked at all about the 3 special focus communities that people join by virtue of what they need from the community. For example, the law students community. That program appeals to students at all of the Washington area law schools, with learning and volunteer opportunities while they're still receiving their education and becoming acclimated to the profession in DC. So that's one special interest group. But then there are 2 other current communities that individuals find it important to belong to, and certainly they can benefit from them. Felicia, tell me a little bit about the DC Affairs community and what you think potential members would get out of being involved in it?
Well, DC Affairs has the pulse on what's going on in DC, what's going on legislatively. So if you work or have an interest in the district and you practice before the DC Council, the executive branch, or in the courts, this is a very important community to join because the DC Affairs monitors legislative, judicial, and related legal developments affecting the District of Columbia. So if that's your practice area and you want to know what's going on in DC Affairs really has a pulse on what actually is going on. Plus, it provides opportunities to network with key government officials and businesses in the community. About 2 years ago, when we opened the new headquarters, Mayor Bowser came to do the ribbon cutting ceremony. But DC Affairs is very, very important because you've got to know what's going on in DC.
DC Affairs has also had some terrific Meet the Candidates programs, also some wonderful programs put on by journalists who cover DC Affairs. So it's got pretty broad interest. Thanks, Felicia. Tom, tell us about the law practice community.
Well, the law practice community is geared toward the business of the law firm, essentially, and the work-life balance to some extent. They're the community that is involved in how we do business as attorneys, hiring practices, some of the programs they've put on recently, or they're going to be putting on, how new cannabis legislation is going to affect working in the District of Columbia and employee relations, how you can foster wellness programs within your own firm, business development and business growth opportunities and strategies. It's not so much, I don't want to say it's not so much the practice of law, because it certainly is, but it's not the legal precedent and statutes that we always think of when we think of the practice of law. It is the nuts and bolts of how to be a lawyer. And I think certainly, again, looking at the opportunities, if you want to start your own firm, if you've already started your own firm, or you want to grow in the firm you're in, they've got some valuable information.
Indeed, some of the basics, how to get paid, how to keep your files, all very important aspects of the business of law.
How not to keep your bank accounts. That's a good one.
Exactly. Well, in addition to these 3 special focus communities, in the next year, the DC Bar Communities is going to add a 4th special interest community, and that's the Young Lawyers community. I'd like you to tell me a little bit about this upcoming initiative. Felicia, what do you know?
Well, first of all, this will be the first time, and we're celebrating our 50th anniversary, and the first time in the 50 years of the DC Bar existence that we're going to have hopefully have a young lawyers community, which is nice that we're going to be working with the Bar Association of DC. So we'll be working together with that. And, it's about time the DC Bar Communities does have a young lawyers committee, because many other states have active young lawyer community sections. So it's very important to help, especially help new lawyers once they graduate or they're working for a firm, they're working for the government or a nonprofit, to help them, because it's hard when you first start working. It's not easy when you first start working as a lawyer. You think you know everything, but you don't. And you want to make sure everybody is included. And also there's help there that we can help you so that people don't feel so alone. But I think this is going to be a great opportunity because we're also, as I said, we're going to be working with the Bar Association of DC, and I'm really looking forward for this committee to get on board. I think we need it. We definitely need it.
So we're in the process of shaping what that community is going to look like. Tom, if you were giving advice to staff as well as leaders who will be helping to form this entity, what do you think needs to be included to make sure that young lawyers are provided good information and training?
I think from a staff perspective, I would make sure that the young lawyers have entree into the other parts of the community, perhaps liaison positions with the other communities. Because as Felicia said, it's a great way to get information and start building your knowledge base and your practice. Certainly, it's an excellent way to network, and not only within the young lawyers community itself, but with the other communities as well. from a staff perspective, I think we also need to find a way to encourage and incentivize participation in programs and the other services, perhaps discounted fees for programs, something like that. From a young lawyer's perspective, from a new entrant into the community, as you will, I think what we need to encourage is involvement. It is a great way to network. It's a great way to join with your friends and your colleagues. It's certainly a great way to pick up on all those issues and problems and subjects that you did not pick up in law school and you need for your practice. And it is a great way to begin to develop leadership skills that you can then bring to the bar. Because let's face it, Felicia and I are not going to be here forever. So we're looking for a lot of new blood, and we're looking for people who can come in and can bring new ideas and fresh skills to the communities and to the bar.
When you mention new ideas and new blood, that brings us to another area that the DC Bar is going to be working on in the year ahead. The Communities has taken initial steps and really has been at the forefront of programming and activities related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the DC Bar. These programs are taking off and most likely are going to be moving over to the larger bar in many activities. And so in the year ahead, I think that in addition to welcoming this new young lawyer community, the DC Bar is going to be focusing on areas that will bring a lot of new voices in. And I know that through your work with Communities, you'll be looking forward to these activities as we flesh those out and provide other opportunities for participation and satisfaction in the profession. I want to thank both Tom and Felicia for their time today. Really appreciate your telling our listeners about Communities activities and about what has been going on recently and what's coming up in the year ahead.
Thank you, Pam, for inviting us to speak. And everybody that's listening, join a community because it's the best way to learn about your law practice.
Pam, thank you very much for including us.
Well, I appreciate your being here with me this afternoon. I also want to thank Jessica Harris of the Communities Department, who is providing technical support for the podcast, and to the entire Communities office for its support of DC Bar Communities activities and for supporting the programs and activities that Felicia and Tom have described today. Thanks for listening to this special 50th anniversary episode of Brief Encounters. More episodes are available on the DC Bar's Communities website or wherever you subscribe to podcasts.
This episode is brought to you in part by our sponsor, Chat Agents. Visit chatagents.com/DCBar to learn more and get a 60-day free trial plus special discounts for DC Bar members.